Good afternoon, everyone. I'm flying solo this afternoon, so we're busy figuring things out as we go. Can you all see me? Oh, hello. Hi there. So welcome to our third Botanical Society webinar. And sorry, I'm getting a weird message. I'm going to switch that off and then return to it. Welcome to our third Botanical Society webinar. It's autumn, things are changing, the lights is starting to change. The autumn bulbs are out. We can feel that changes in the air. And we just wanted to say the Botanical Society is a 113-plus-year-old membership-based society. And we're very thrilled, especially if you're joining us for the first time. These are our conservation webinars, which we work with which we present to our partners, CREW, as well as other invited partners, depending on which topics we're covering. So today, we're going to be talking about citizen science and also just looking at how we knit all these things together to protect our botanical riches. So if you haven't yet looked at our website, please go and check it out. The slide, everything's not working today. So our website is the www.botanicalsociety.org.za. And what we're always trying to do in these webinars is to look at how we introduce conservation information in an accessible way for people. And we're always wanting to be looking at the key elements as per the BotSoc conservation strategy. So that's monitoring key species, securing sites, and reducing loss of special species and habitats, supporting botanical gardens, especially with propagation of threatened and interesting plants, and also building capacity of professional botanists and raising awareness. And it's nice that we tick all those boxes tonight. I'm actually going to hand over shortly to one of the godfathers of citizen science in South Africa. So Tony Rebelo is a veteran of both a member of the Botanical Society, but he's been at SANBI for longer than most of us have been alive. He was involved with the Protea Atlas project, which he'll speak about in detail, vegetation mapping in South Africa, conservation planning, and restoration, getting hands-on in many places, but notably Takai, close to where he lives. He's one of the leading contributors and curators of the Citizen Science Virtual Museum at iNaturalist, and is also in 2003 received the Botanical Society Flora Conservation Award in 2003 for his contributions to encouraging amateur involvement in botany. So Tony, could you unmute yourself and share with us the history of botanical citizen science in the country? I think what we like to do at BotSoc always is to provide context, because we are this historical organization, and then link it to how we work.
Thank you, Rupert. Yeah, I'm going to mention a little bit about the Protea Atlas project and citizen science, in the start of it, or how we got going. When I was starting my career in the early 1980s, and the BotSoc was, of course, one of the societies that one was very interested in and wanted to join. And it offered things like hikes and walks and talks and tours and annual plant sale, free seeds, of course, Felton Flora, the bookshop, free admission to botanical gardens, the BotSoc field guides, and conservation activism. I still don't know what conservation activism is, but anyway, it was on the list. I, of course, joined. I spent my first month's salary becoming a life member, and that was the best 250 rand I've ever spent. But of course, the question is, where is citizen science? All these activities are fun activities, but they don't involve the public in actually collecting data and doing something for looking after the environment. It's not like atlases didn't exist. This is the Atlas of the British Flora. And you can see over here, it was published in 1962. So this was work done in the 1950s, and it was done by amateurs, interested public. Anyone who was interested, they went out and they recorded the locality of the plants in the British Isles, and then they produced the atlas. Notice it's been done twice. So Rupert, I hope you're listening. It's 30 years since we did the Protea Atlas project. I think it's time we did it again.
Agreed.
What got me interested was the South African Bird Atlas project. I'm also a member of the Bird Society, Cape Bird Club, and they started the Bird Atlas project in 1987. And I was saying, why couldn't we do the same for plants? I mean, if they can do it for birds, we plant people can probably do it better. And it turned out that the Australians had just done a Banksia Atlas at the stage. And when I delved into it, I discovered that they were 10 years ahead of us with the Bird Atlas as well. But if they could do their plants, we could do it better by far. And they'd also done pilot studies on kangaroo paws and orchids on a smaller scale before going on this. So there was a lot we could learn from the way they'd gone about it. And so the big question was, how do we go about setting up a citizen science? And of course, the first port of call is the BotSoc. And we asked them for seed funding. And they provided us with a bit of money. And we had a couple of workshops to try and figure out what we do and how. So we looked at the different groups and we decided that bulbs and succulents and aloes, orchids, cycads, those were all too risky. And we didn't know who would be coming along to actually go and poach it rather than help us record it. So we decided, no, we'd leave those ones for the time being. And then too difficult, well, grasses. I mean, who is going to atlas grasses? And Cape reeds, that's almost the same. Also difficult. And ericas, wow, they're spectacular. They're lovely. There are lots of them, but there's too many of them. And how do you tell them apart? How do you identify them? And we effectively came down to two groups, the proteas or trees. Both are popular. Both are well covered with guides. And there wasn't a field guide at that stage to proteas, but lots of references and available to the public. And there'd been a dendrological society and a tree society for many years in South Africa, and they didn't get their act together. So we decided, no, okay, let's go for proteas. It's our national flower. It's got easy groups like Protea, difficult groups like leucodendron, which everyone seems to have trouble with, and then really obscure groups like the spatellas and diastellas, which most people don't even notice. And then the question was, what should we do? We agreed we weren't going to do it provincial, but should we do South Africa or Southern Africa? And in the end, we decided for the same bang for our buck, we might as well just do Southern Africa. There's only one species in Namibia and only one in Botswana, but we'd go for it anyway. And then the question was, how long would it take us to get meaningful data? Should it be a 2-year, 5-year, or 10-year project? The Banksia Atlas was 2, and the Bird Atlas was 5, so we decided we'd go for 10. And that's how the Protea Atlas project came about. It ran from 1992 to 2002. We were funded by Department of Environment Affairs and WWF, and UCT and SANBI provided us with facilities. And the method was simple. You went out and you did a 500-meter plot anywhere you liked, and preferably where there was a protea. You marked it on a map, and because maps were expensive, difficult to get hold of, we provided maps to anyone who was interested. If they said we were going to an area, we'd give them the map for that area and they could work with those maps. And then they had to fill in habitat data. So this is quite different from the Bird Atlas, which is just a matter of going to a big grid square and recording your species. We actually wanted habitat data. What is the plant growing in? Was it on a steep slope or shallow slope? What is it doing? And we wanted you to then record the species. So you recorded the species, but we wanted data on the species as well. So how many did you see? Was it flowering? Was there new growth? Was it resprouting? What pollinators were they visiting if it was flowering? And what height was it? Now, of course, all this is a lot more complicated than just going and making a list of birds. So we had to do workshops to actually train the people on filling in the forms. You'd be surprised how many people differ in what the definition of a height of a plant is, or whether it was in flower or not. So we had to standardize it and make it simple and amenable, and then everyone could use the same definition when they said that it was in growth. And then, of course, we had to do courses on plant identification so that people could identify the stuff. And then it was quite simple. You were given field notebooks. In the field, you filled in your notebook. When you got home, you did the map work to work out your coordinates. You filled it on a paper form. You then, not emailed, which was before days of email. You sent it by the post office. And today it wouldn't get there. Those days was efficient and got there within a day or two. Then we digitized it at GCT. And then from the digitizing, we put it into the database. And then we had to check the data, the reports, postal services, user check, and to identify the specimens, we did eco-scraps and photocopies. So what were our achievements? Well, we discovered 8 new species. We had 61,000 sites of 250,000 records of proteas. We had notes on the new species and lost populations. And when the project came to an end, we had over 1,100 observers. That's not quite right, because some of them was just the one person who filled in, but they had their partner and their friends went with them. So there was a lot more. They were teams, effectively. 1,100 teams with 10 years of experience and nothing to do. The spin-offs, there were many spin-offs. We were able to red list the proteas, but not only were we able to red list them, we were able to look at the climate change, the predictions, and say, where are they going to be? How does that change their red list status? And the Bayesian modelers contacted us. They wanted a proof of concept that they could model species using Bayesian modeling. And today it's old hat. If you're an honor student or third-year student, you go onto the web and you download an R package, and it all happens in a couple of seconds. You can, not couple of seconds, couple of minutes, you can model the species range. In 2002, that was not possible. There wasn't even sure that it could be done. And then the fine scale vegetation mapping of South African types, we were able to say where the famous was because we knew where the proteas were. And we were able to use that for modeling. And then conservation planning, again today, we have all these fantastic tools. And when it started the Protea Atlas, end of the Protea Atlas project, when we had the data, this was all new. And then of course we had 1,100 observers with 10 years of experience and nothing to do. And where are we today? Before we go and say that, should just point out we've had 2 generations since the Protea Atlas project. The generation is 15 years, the time between fire. So it's now 2 cycles. I think it's time that we reran the Protea Atlas project, and we're going to be looking for funding. We're going to be trying to see whether that's feasible or not. The only problem is that it's going to cost per year what it cost us to run the whole project 30 years ago. 30 years ago. Okay, so one of the things that we did was we found a use for all those board and listless Protea Atlases, and many of them became CREW members. And then going on from that, we got involved in more citizen science sites, and going via iSpot, we got involved in iNaturalist. And today we're sitting at 1.5 million observations by 15,000 citizen scientists in Southern Africa. And we're hoping that we're going to improve and get better. So my call to you is that if you're not already a citizen science, if you're not already participating in collecting data on our plants and animals for science, for research, for conservation, please join us. And specifically, if you'd like to take part in the City Nature Challenge, which will be running at the end of the school holidays on the 30th of April to the 3rd of May. All you need is your smartphone, sign up to iNaturalist, download the iNaturalist app, and take part in recording biodiversity. The focus here is on the cities, but hopefully once we've done the cities, afterwards you'll be able to go out and help us record the plants and animals throughout the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. That's a super introduction, and I like showing the fact that, you know, we've got this DNA, as you say, it's now over 2 generations, and we've got a fantastic baseline thanks to the work of yourself and the team, and that multiplier effect of your 1,100 to the 14,000 and a half observers that we have. We just want to continue that trend. So well done. I think people should just go keep on reading about the Protea Atlas and see what learnings there are to be had. I've still got some of the old papers in the BotSoc office from those conception days. Okay, thank you so much, Tony. So from history, we're moving to current, and I'd really like to introduce Suvarna Parbhoo Mohan from SANBI, but specifically she heads up the Custodians of Rare and Endangered Wildflowers project CREW that people would have heard about. Tony, if you can just stop sharing your screen. And Suvarna enjoys networking with a variety of people and exploring botanically and culturally interesting places. Travels obviously a little bit curtailed at the moment. She's really focused on growing the network of CREW citizen scientists, mentoring students into plant conservation sector, and additionally is the chair of our KZN coastal branch. So she's got a really full plate. So this linkage is what she's going to be exploring a bit in her presentation. Just showing, where the data goes and what happens to it, because it's about purpose. It's nice to enjoy nature, but it's even nicer to enjoy nature and take the observations that you've made and make sure that the species that you've observed are actually taken care of. So she's going to introduce us to something to how that process works. And then also, according to her bio, when she's not out on field trips, she's really a keen gardener at home. So that's the no-grow part of BotSoc, and spending time with her family and the dogs. So thank you, Suvarna. If you could share your screen and share your presentation as well. If you want to potentially put your video off, if you're concerned, then you can do that as well.
Thank you, Rupert. I think what was also missed in my bio is that I'm also a doggy mom, so I apologize in advance should my dogs decide to also be part of this webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and taking the time out to hear about South Africa's citizen science work that's been happening across the country thus far. The diversity and uniqueness of South Africa's plants and animals makes us one of the world's mega diverse countries. They are countries that together contain more than 2/3 of the world's biodiversity. While South Africa's territory covers just 1% of the earth, we have over 20,400 plant species, of which 2/3 is endemic, in other words, found nowhere else in the world. Our animal species include 5% of the world's mammal species, 7% of birds, 4% reptiles, 24% octopus and squid, and 5% of butterfly species. South Africa has an exceptionally wide range of ecosystem types classified and mapped across its landscape and seascape. Our biodiversity gives our people tangible benefits like food, clean water, medicine, and materials. It helps protect us from natural hazards like flood and drought while offering natural spaces for recreation and cultural activities. As South Africa's biodiversity comprises high species diversity from a wide range of ecosystems, there exists a significant challenge to monitor biodiversity. The reduction of government resources available for biodiversity conservation indicates that optimal use of all human capacity, knowledge, and applicable technologies is required to achieve monitoring to inform our policy and conservation action. Citizen science is strengthened by key NGOs that support the work of government to ensure the conservation of biodiversity, thus transcending geographic, taxonomic, and ecosystem boundaries. Interestingly, citizen science true value has only recently been recognized. A range of citizen science projects exist across South Africa, from collecting data and the use of protocols and observations to assess habitats and recording changes in the landscape that can be linked to climate change. I will take a closer look at the observational and virtual museums by showcasing a case study from each. The Custodians of Rare and Endangered Wildflowers, CREW, is a national citizen science program within government collaborating in the implementation of the National Strategy for Plant Conservation and funded by the Botanical Society of South Africa and a family-owned Mapula Trust. Started in 2003, CREW involves citizen scientists directly in the field surveys and monitoring key sites for plant species in priority parts of the South African landscape. Citizen scientists are trained in plant identification, provided with information to track down plant taxa of conservation concern specific to their particular region, as well as they are linked to their conservation agency. The South African National Biodiversity Institute, SANBI, is the country's dedicated biodiversity organization that bridges science, knowledge, policy, and implementation. SANBI is committed to providing the necessary skills at all tiers of its work to increase capacity in the biodiversity sector by working closely with a managed network, including biodiversity specialists, NGOs, provincial and local conservation agencies, and academics. Although citizen science is captured under human capital development, it contributes to many components of SANBI's mandate, which I will explain in the next few slides. The historical distribution records of the plant taxa of conservation concern is obtained via the Red List and the Herbaria. The 3 CREW nodes assign these taxa to the CREW groups according to where each group is based and annually host planning meetings with each group to determine the taxa to be surveyed for that field season. CREW citizen scientists document the occurrence of plants of conservation concern, collect specimens, as well as sometimes are able to identify which endemic taxa require conservation, thus contributing to the foundations of biodiversity. Data collected by CREW via the database and iNaturalist feeds into the Red List process, whereby a small team of scientists assess each taxa within the IUCN Red List, categories and criteria, herbarium specimens, literature, and CREW data to assign a threat category which is published online. Red List assessments are used in creating various land use decision-making tools. The building of biodiversity knowledge is used for evidence-based policy advice. South Africa's National Biodiversity Assessment Report, the NBA as it's commonly known, is the culmination of a rigorous 5-year process to assess the country's biodiversity across the ecosystems, species, and genetic diversity realms to inform policy and decision-making across a range of sectors. An example is the CREW program working closely with the provincial biodiversity stewardship programs to build plant conservation awareness with both private and communal landowners. This is to increase protected areas across our country. CREW citizen scientists focus on searching for specific taxa throughout the year, leading to discovering new species and rediscovering species thought to be extinct in the wild. Our newest species is the Morea, found by CREW CFR Node Manager, that will be published later this year. The Rudatus Ranges CREW group has been searching for Turea strae unsuccessfully for years. This field season, while exploring the remote part of the Amkumas Valley, they were rewarded by the discovery of a healthy population of this species. Rediscovered species are then reassessed by our Red List team. With modern technology, citizen science biodiversity participation via online platforms is rapidly increasing. iNaturalist, a joint initiative by the California Academy of Sciences and the National Geographic Society, is one of the world's most popular nature apps to help citizens identify plants and animals while connecting with a community of over 1 million scientists and naturalists. What's more, by recording and sharing observations, research quality data is generated for scientists working to better understand and protect nature. There are over 700 projects on iNaturalist Southern Africa, though I would like to draw your attention to the projects most useful for plant conservation. Here is an example of INAT observations contributing to the red list assessments, whereby the red list scientist uses the distributional record as well as additional information from the iNaturalist red list project, which is completed by the observer. iNaturalist City Nature Challenge is an international effort for people to find and document plants and wildlife in cities across the globe. Last year, despite the COVID-19 lockdown, the 4-day City Nature Challenge yielded higher results than previous years. 5 South African cities, Tshwane, eThekwini, eBeka, otherwise known as PE, Garden Route, and Cape Town, will once again participate. The Great Southern BioBlitz was started after the Australian organizers of the City Nature Challenge decided that the summer hemisphere needed a BioBlitz during the spring explosion of life. South Africa will focus on species monitoring for the Southern Hemisphere BioBlitz. The City Nature Challenge organizing team will be hosting iNaturalist training sessions virtually and in person as we prepare for the challenge. We are looking to assess for champions to host BioBlitzes at particular sites in the participating cities. We look forward to engaging with you via social media and email, as well as a social post this webinar. Please diarize the weekend of 30th April to the 3rd of May as we celebrate our biodiverse cities. I'd like to thank the various funders for making our projects a reality, the SANBI network of partners for their collaboration in the projects, and our incredibly passionate citizen scientists for their time and effort. Our gratitude to the Botanical Society of South Africa for initiating this webinar series as a platform to showcase the exciting and much needed projects and opportunities within the plant conservation sector. I thank you.
Thanks so much, Suvarna. That really gives us great context. I also just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that if we're not taking questions immediately, but if you had questions, to pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And also, if you wanted to just say hi, go to the chat box and say where you're from. I see there's a lovely message from the BotSoc GM, Antonio de Barros, just welcoming everybody and thanking you for your attention to the webinar tonight. So our next speaker is stuck somewhere in the Baviaanskloof. So I've pre-recorded Shaun Swanepoel. So Shaun Swanepoel is another veteran of the Protea Atlas project. He's currently working on all things around alien and invasive species. He does training in eradication techniques, surveys to assess levels of infestation, as well as the financial costings of the eradication. So that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about in a future webinar. And he's a generalist when it comes to nature, and is interested in everything, as you'll see from his video. And he got started on citizen science project, as I said, with Protea Atlas project, and then migrated to iNaturalist with the Southern African community. So I'm just going to share this video now. And if everyone's ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here from the Garden Route City Nature Challenge. I'd like to just introduce you to
Mm. And go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shaun here from the Garden Route City Nature Challenge. I'd like to just introduce you to our endeavors of 2020 and also have a look at encouraging everyone to enjoy and participate in the City Nature Challenge for 2021. For the garden routes, our first year was last year, thanks to Colin signing us up and all that, which happened to coincide with the whole lockdown period that we were running at end of April and all that kind of stuff. So the garden route, pretty much over the 4-day period for the challenge, managed to record over 17,500 different observations. We will look at the map quickly. You can see the shapefile where most of the observations were coming, predominantly from the coastal region and some of them out in the CREW area. Of that 17,000, 2,692 species of plants in that, well, plants, animals, insects, everything else except humans, was recorded for that particular period. And this was done by a total of 324 observers. Small number of people, large number of observations. Coming to the City Nature Challenge for 2021, we are looking at the same area as last year. If we have a look at the map here, it's from down below Seabrook, which is just to the east of Swellendam, the Bitsand area, all along the coastal line, including 2 nautical kilometers out to sea, including Mossel Bay, George, all the way up to Plettenberg Bay and Nature's Valley. Inland, we're going to Uniondale, the Rists, along the southern slopes of the Swartberg Mountains, all the way up to Naisberg and Ladysmith. Okay, the terrestrial area of the Garden Route City Nature Challenges covers an extent of 3 million hectares. Partners that we've got involved, Cape Nature, Sandparks, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, the Wilderness Centenary, Oatrams, Bot Society, Landmark Foundation, Neisner Basin Project. WESA plays a very big role, and of course, the iNaturalists partners on board as well. So we've got a number of different institutions in that are all hunting and trying to promote the CNC throughout the garden route. Just to show some highlights from the garden that's come out over time. If we have a look at this little critter here, this is a frog-eater ground beetle discovered in the Garden Route Botanical Gardens. And we always wonder, is it necessary to take thousands upon thousands of photos? Aren't we inundating the system with repeats of everything? But we might take 1,000 photos of something, but then all of a sudden we end up with something extraordinary. Like in this particular case, the frog-eater ground beetle, which was discovered on a frog in the Garden Route Botanical Gardens. We just go down, previously known from Israel, Japan, and India only. Now we're sitting down in the Southern Cape, where it has also materialized. Another interesting thing that came out of the Botanical Gardens in George was the Kerbum's ghost moth, which survived for about a 3-year period within the cerebrums before it hatches out, and then subsequently lays its eggs and all that kind of stuff, and then goes back into the cerebrums tree. The idea of it is not to kill the tree during its lifespan, but actually just lives in it, taking out its sap and that kind of stuff. And then the larva moves up and down the stem. This was rediscovered in the garden roots, and was previously only mentioned about 40 years ago. Now, the whole thing about the CNC is people and interaction with nature. The idea of City Nature Challenge, yes, it is for recording species and that, but it's also getting people involved with nature. Just to have a look at the photo here on the Como Trail, out in the mountains, out in the velds, getting down and dirty, taking photographs and observing, seeing what is there. You have a look at this photo, look at the fine details on the plants. Now, we are not expecting high definition, high quality photos from everyone. This one just goes to show how intricate a plant can be, but a photo of a bird, a photo of a plant, all in general, all helps to locate, ID, and document what is where. Again, Botanical tramps out in the mountains, trying to get up close and personal with nature and document what is there. Botanical tramps doing amazing work when it comes to discovering and plotting rare and endangered around the Southern Cape. Again, out in the Swartberg Mountains, young and old, doesn't matter who you are, you can go out and go and enjoy nature. And that is what the scenes is about. Not doing it for someone else, doing it for yourself. Going out, what is this? Uploading it. You don't know what it is? That's fine. Someone else will come online and ID it for you. That way you learn and you get to know what is around you in your gardens, in your community, out in the natural areas, in the mountains, rivers, streams, doesn't matter where it is. Anything that's nature can be recorded for the City Nature Challenge. The City Nature Challenge, as you know, runs from the 30th of April to the 3rd of May, and in a few days thereafter, allowing for uploads and all that kind of stuff. We encourage everyone, schools, communities, businesses, individuals, young, old, everyone, to get involved with this great challenge and show the rest of the world what a beautiful country we have. And of course, importantly, the garden route, what a beautiful place this is. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so there was a really on the ground effort that catapulted the garden route city into the top 10 of the Nature Challenge last year. And I like how Shaun lays out that it's all accessible to everyone ultimately. So I would also encourage people, if you're not yet following the Botanical Society on these various social media platforms, go out and find us. If you're not a member yet, that would be nice to rectify. And we're going to be sharing a lot of information in this month now leading up to the City Nature Challenge on our various social media platforms. So please go there and help and see how you can get involved. Okay, so I've just been flipping through the list of attendees. It's so nice to see so many members and old friends from all over the country. And I know they're all busy getting ready for the iNat, as well as a lot of new names. So our next speaker is, I can't say this otherwise than young Jeremy Gilmore, who's a grade 11 high school student from the southern suburbs of Cape Town. He's a committee member at the Friends of Takai Park and is, as you would have seen from the flyer, a regular, with his tree pop over his shoulder, a regular hacker and removing invasive species from important areas. He's had a keen interest in plants for most of his life and enjoys hiking, especially around Cape Town, and has learned a lot from just being in the field, but also spending time with some of our more knowledgeable BotSoc members, such as Tony Rebelo. And he's really is a bit of a phenomenon on iNaturalist. So last year, you have to tell us, Jeremy, you had about 1,000 observations in the City Nature Challenge over a weekend. So please share your screen and put in your video and tell us a bit about why younger people should be interested in the challenge. And also thank you to Jeremy's parents for allowing us to profile him on this platform. Cheers, go for it, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Rupert. I'm just going to share my screen and then I'll turn on the video. Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
All right.
You unshared your PowerPoint?
Yeah. Okay. I think, can everyone see it? Rupert, can you see?
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks for the introduction again. So this evening, I'll be giving a very short presentation about iNaturalist, specifically why it is so compelling to the youth. So first off, iNaturalist is a social network based in the United States. It can be accessed via the website or downloaded as the app on your smartphone, where users create an account much like social media and upload observations by uploading photos of fauna and flora that they find out in the field. And then, of course, having them identified either by themselves, they can identify it, or other people in the iNaturalist community, or both, of course. So iNaturalist has gained a significant amount of popularity in the recent years, specifically among young people. To begin with, iNaturalist is very straightforward and easy to navigate. So this is one of the big reasons why it is so popular and fun to use throughout the entire process of observing, identifying, interacting with others with similar fields of interest, and in the end, learning and gaining knowledge about local biodiversity, ecosystems, how they function, what their threats are, and even teaching the youth how they can lead appropriate responses to environmental challenges in the future. So many of us own smartphones nowadays, and we also know how active the youth are on social media platforms, of which iNaturalist is actually very similar to, and can even be called one itself. Except in opposition to most social media platforms, of course, iNaturalist offers a much more healthier substitute for young people to directly interact with like-minded people, and more importantly, professionals such as ecologists and conservationists, often sparking a continued environmental interest and stewardship. Of course, I'm speaking from experience with the former. As a side note, observations don't require a mobile data connection in the field to upload observations, but rather observations can rather be synced or uploaded when connected to the Wi-Fi at home. So this is extremely useful when data is limited or the cost of data is often a concern. One activity promoted by iNaturalist is bioblitzing. Bioblitzing is when volunteers, such as students, go out into the field and record their observations through iNaturalist, for example. So these bioblitzes can be organized by teachers or anyone, of course. But iNaturalist makes this a fun and easy way for the youth to actually get out of the house, explore nature, and empowering them to contribute invaluable research and data to the community that is often used by scientists. In the end, building a positive relationship between young citizen scientists and more experienced conservationists. So to summarize what I've said through my own experience, I was first introduced to iNaturalist by Dr. Tony Rebelo, who's did the Protea Atlas presentation a little while ago. I was first introduced to iNaturalist in 2019, which was Cape Town's first year participating in the Global City Nature Challenge, iNaturalist City Nature Challenge. We actually came first for both the number of species and number of observations that year, which isn't really a surprise, considering our incredible biodiversity here in the Cape, but that's enough bragging. So this challenge really opens up like a whole new perspective of learning about nature, which it's really unique on its own, but it's absolutely probably the most enjoyable learning experience you can have. So occasionally someone of note would drop a comment or an identification on one of my observations, which would instantly just inspire me to continue making more observations from wherever I went. So from there, I started looking at other people's observations from the area, and eventually even began posting my own IDs on other people's identifications and other people's observations, which evidently I've come a long way since then, since that started off with 1 or 2 every week or so. But I don't really know where I'd be without iNaturalist today, but I know I wouldn't be giving this presentation this evening. So thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Okay, so that's the end of our formal talks. And we're open for questions, but I think, you know, what we did try to put together in terms of the speaker selection is that kind of unbroken line of starting with Protea Atlas right through to CREW and iNat now, and actually what it takes generationally to build the infrastructure that is a world leading one now. And Jeremy, I just wanted to say, when I was recording with Shaun Swanepoel, he was like, yo, I was wondering who this lady is that keeps on doing the identifications and yeah, so he'd like to meet you at some stage. So we'll sort that out when we're all vaccinated. Okay, so I'm not seeing that many questions, but there is in the chat a first question, and maybe if everyone could just put your cameras on. For Jeremy, so that's Andrea Weiss from WWF, wanting to know just what sparked your interest in botany, because I mean, as a plant person myself, we know that there aren't, you know, that many people in the field. It seems, especially if you look at the kind of CREW model, that people get interested in plants a bit later on rather than just like how you've done. So could you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, well, it sounds weird, but it's basically almost always been with me. I have stories that my parents have told me. My first words were plant names and that. And so there's never been a time where I've gone, oh, I really enjoy this when I haven't done it before. So it's definitely something that I've just had with me throughout my life this whole time. Just, of course, building up the knowledge and the experience and all of that.
So you're the original Fynbos baby, actually.
Yeah.
Tony, I think when you were talking about some of the data and you know how hard it was in the past, I can really, as someone who was in university in the early 2000s, I remember how painful it was to put together something like a digital elevation model, which is something that you do with a click of a button now on Google Earth, for example. So how do you, having been there from the paper maps right through to now, how do you kind of experience that? And you are obviously super active on iNaturalist, so if you've ever uploaded something at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll see that Tony's probably commented on it. How do you just like follow that knowledge and stay comfortable in it? Because, you know, there are certain people who do find it a little bit intimidating. Could you maybe just give them a tip?
Oh, I rely on my daughter, and I assume soon I'm going to be relying on my grandson. No, we've come a long way. During the start of the Protea Atlas, in 1994, we decided to experiment with a GPS, and we took it to the top of Johannesburg, It weighed over a kilogram. It had an aerial about 10 centimeters in diameter. And we hauled this thing all the way up the top, and it gave us 2 readings before the battery was flat. And it was accurate to 500 meters. So compared to today, where your cell phone tells you where you are and tells your parents where you are, or your wife, yes, we've gone a long, long way. And yeah, so filling in notebooks. I think if we redo the Protea Atlas project, it'll all be on your cell phone, on your smartphone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be pretty simple.
Yeah, but
this was
even
so
during the Protea Atlas project, the technology changing was immense. So when we started, it was all paper, but by the time we ended, and people were sending stuff via email, so we were getting all our data by email, and we were being able to respond immediately. And of course,
Okay.
OTRAMS, they discovered that the photocopiers, color photocopiers, did things digitally. So they would then send digital copies of their specimens. That collect the specimens, make nice photocopies, and then email them. It was brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, so they've always been a bit ahead of the curve. I just also want to point people towards the chat. There's a couple of interesting links that have been put in there. Tony's dropped in the link to the City Nature Challenge. Suvarna's put in a link to SANBI website with CREW. I've put in the link for the post webinar hangout, which is a much more relaxed Zoom meeting where people can just connect. So that'll start at 6:15. Suvarna, I think maybe just to bring again that national emphasis to the City Nature Challenge, just remind people which cities are involved again, and you know, we'll probably put up a link again, and people need to look at our social media to ensure how they can get hold of the various champions for the cities. But yeah, just spell that out for us a little.
Sure. Thanks, Rupert. There's 5 cities. It's Cape Town, Garden Route, PE. I'm not saying the new name again. eThekwini and Tshwane. And we are hosting virtual iNat training every week on a Tuesday and a Thursday at 10 o'clock, as well as on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. So it's just an hour session on particular topics, or if you want a complete rundown of the basics of iNat, we could do that too. And we could also have virtual as well as live sessions. So we just need to pre-book, and in any of the participating cities, we're ready to give you iNat training. Thanks.
Awesome. I see there's a question that in the chat from Frank Webb up in Bombela. Frank's the chairman of our Lowveld branch, about whether it's too late to register and get folks interested. So Antonia has responded, but I'm just reading it out for everyone. It's too late for 2021. The deadline is October for the following year. So it does take quite a bit of organizing, but I think, Frank, if you're keen for next year, then let's make October a target for us for helping Bombela to get on the map and start with the botanical garden. But obviously there's all sorts of really nice habitat in the Lowveld that needs to be better recorded than it currently is. So, Antonio also says you can register now already. So let's take this offline, maybe, Tony and Frank, to see how we can kickstart that process up in the old Eastern Transvaal, the Lowland, and in Mpumalanga now. Good. Are there any other questions or any points? Oh, I did forget, Suvarna, to talk about how currently iNaturalist is being used, and I can share screen from my side from our from iNaturalist quickly, just so people can see. So Suvarna did say that the data is used, and I just wanted to show you in live what that looks like. So this is an observation that I made last spring, and currently because we need to be very focused when we're doing red listing for the country, we tend to work on groups that have had recent updates. So you might have seen, we mentioned it in the last webinar, or the second last one, about Proteaceae had just been, the whole family had been reassessed again for IUCN red listing and local red listing as well. And now, because that nice new book is out, the Iridaceae are the next target of being listed. And this is an observation of a bobianke, which looked like Babiana blanda. And if you see, people have tried to identify it, and I wasn't sure, and someone was sure, but it is a hybrid. And here's Domitilla Raimondo from SANBI, who we saw in webinar 1, just giving a bit of feedback, and at the end of it saying that this, because it's a hybrid, it has not been used for red listing. But that just shows directly how your iNat observations are contributing to conservation. So at the end of the day, if you've got an observation of something which is on the red list, and you've used that, especially that red list project that Suvarna spoke about, then that data will be extracted and used going forward. So if you needed any more incentive, I think that's a pretty decent one. We've got about 4 minutes left on this particular session. So I think, panelists, do you have any, oh, sorry, there's a question, and Tony, you can answer this quickly. Any de Klerk asks, how can I get guidance identifying lichens on iNaturalist?
Lichens, yes. Absolutely spectacular, but very difficult to ID. I think we've got an amazing lichen flora. I think it's over 2,500 species.
That's right, of course. And there's a lot more.
Sure. Yes, and we've got a very good collection of them on iNaturalist. So the problem is we don't have any taxonomists in the country. So all of the ones I've posted are being identified in Lithuania by the experts there. There's a couple of institutes there and in Sweden that specialize in lichens. So yes, and the IDs are being done internationally and not by any of our local people. But they're quite fun. There's a couple of groups that are impossible to identify unless you have the 3 chemicals. What is it? Potassium iodine and the carcinogenic one. And you need to leave little marks on the thing and see what color it is and photograph it when it's in color. But that's about 200 species that are difficult, but we can get them to genus. So we are there. Just post your stuff, take a close up, and we'll work on it. And then hopefully we'll be able to get a field guide soon, get someone interested, or perhaps start a society and actually go to some of our lichen desert, lichen seas and go look at all the species there and do something. So I'm really keen on the lichens. We just need somebody to take it and run with it.
Well, I think there's a gap in the market for somebody. You know, if you're doing a botany or science degree and you want to specialize in something that needs a lot of work, you've got to, and you basically have a job for life with all those 2,000 plus species to plan sort. Anything from Suvarna, closing statement?
Thanks, Rupert. I think I've just put it on the chat, but just to say thank you once again for the opportunity, and we look forward to seeing whoever's on this webinar join iNaturalist, partake in our I&E courses, as well as join us for the City Nature Challenge and onwards with iNat, as well as becoming a CREW volunteer. Thank you.
Cool. And Jeremy, last word with you.
Nothing much to say. I think we've covered most. But thank you for hosting this webinar. It's been a really great experience, of course. And yeah, thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining as well.
Yeah, and thanks for participating. It would be pretty boring. It was just me talking to everyone. And I really appreciate the effort that everyone's gone to get your information together. So again, to close off, check out our socials, join the society. And I'm really having problems with PowerPoint today. Our next webinar, which is what I'm trying to show you, is on the last Thursday of the month again. So that's 29th of April at 5 p.m. On the illegal succulent trade. So that's a huge problem. And in conclusion, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us, and Love Green for helping with the beautiful PowerPoints, and just a sneak peek to check out on the BotSoc social medias going forward is that the Nieuwertsville Brunswiggers, as you saw in that picture, have popped. So if you can get up there in the next 2 weeks, do so. So we're gonna shut down this particular conversation, allow everyone to go for a bit of a break, and if you want to join us again in 15 minutes, the link to the Zoom meeting should be on your email reminder that you got, or it's on our social media as well if you go to Facebook.